Roll call.
Chairperson Portis.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Sandal.
Here.
Members Anderson. Here. Bagel.
Here.
Fortune. Dennis. Here. And Simon. Here.
Pledge allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 4, moment of reflection and prayer.
Proverbs 16:6. By steadfast love and faithfulness, iniquity is atoned for, and by the fear of the Lord, one turns away from evil.
Thank you. Conflict of interest. Motion to approve agenda.
I make motion.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion. Open forum. Might have one on there, right?
All right, Jordan, you're up.
Hello, everyone. As you guys know, we're Chris here. I guess why I'm coming tonight is to talk about the building proposal, master plan, school phase, what to build, when to build it. I guess my thought is you guys have been working on this for over 4 years, and I don't know how it takes so long to get something done at the local level. You guys have, to me, kicked the can down the road again and again and again. You guys have thought about one thing, changed to this thing, changed to this thing. You guys have saw how prices have went up. You know, in the last building materials in the last couple of years have almost doubled. You guys could have done so much more if you guys would have done this on a timely fashion, but you decided not to. I wish you guys would be more diligent. Bring it to a vote, so then we as the public would know who is in favor of stuff, who's against it. Instead, we're guessing how everyone feels. I believe if we're gonna do this, we should do it all at once. Yes, I hear, oh, well, it's gonna, bring some money. Everyone I've talked to in the community, nobody once has said, I don't wanna do this because of the price. Everybody says, yes, we should do this. The powerhouse is outdated. I coached over there for 5 years, 30 kids in half the gym. It's ridiculous. Then you have these young kids coming up, travel basketball. You got kids in drama, that stuff to me is very important. Every extracurricular activity is important. You just can't focus on athletics, yes, but this should be looked at. You guys are the ones that are supposed to be making this decision. And if you don't want to make the decision, let's put it to a public vote. I would be completely fine with that, and I would hope you guys would too. To me, it just comes down to doing the right thing. I have not heard anyone talk about not wanting to do it for some reason that I can get behind. So that's all I gotta say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Ryan Dinger.
Just to reiterate what Jordan said, similar comments. Obviously, I was junior high coach for, I can't even guess how long. And it's not just a basketball thing in there. In the powerhouse perspective, you have gymnastics going on, which they're isolated to a small area as well. I'm not over there. I have a daughter in gymnastics, and I'm sure it's cramped for them. And then you have the drama kids on the stage. It can't be fun for them being behind a curtain with 30 basketballs bouncing, girls playing music to gymnastic routines. It's been tolerable, but that's been going on for 12 years since I've been here. Obviously, this has just started several years ago. And I have 4 kids in the school district, or had 4 kids, now I'm down to 3. And probably be down to 1 before anything would get done now. And obviously, a lot of us have young kids here. Not just athletically, academically, classrooms, Obviously, we have file cabinets as lockers, and growth, it looks like it's obviously gonna be there. And providing adequate classroom size. And I haven't studied the plans. I'm assuming they include locker rooms, but the locker room setup we currently have is not good. So, I mean, you have incidents where you have junior high kids in there trying to get out, so a varsity team can come in. Inappropriate things can happen, somebody walks in on somebody, whatever may happen, we've had issues in the past. So, I mean, obviously, locker room facility and having an extra space for that. Obviously, there was only so much money going around the first time when the gym was originally built. I wasn't here when that happened. Obviously, I understand there was budgets there, and the budget here is, like I said, it's obviously things get expensive, but I do a lot of travels in my business, and a lot of schools are being progressive and moving on. Obviously, Kadoka, Lyman, Rapid City Christian, hopefully, and I think it's a serious need. The heating cost, maintenance on the powerhouse is a lot without having figures in front of me, I can tell you that. And yeah, it's something that we need to address and try to get it done as soon as possible. And if it has to be in phases or one shot, I don't know what the right answer is there, but I think we need to move forward as quick as possible and get something started, you know. So, I mean, everything's gonna take a while to build at this point anyhow, so that's my thoughts over the last 10, 12 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. That's it, yep.
Yes. On to the main topic for tonight, building master plan contract for design. Yes. Where do we want to start? Anyone? Late?
So this is the first time I have seen this to scale. I know some people have thought that we have had this for a long time, but that is not the case. When I was emailed, this is not what I had looked at. So one of my questions and my concerns is our big talk right now is the egg shop. And I don't want to forget about any of the other stuff that is on here, because our main goal right now is not building. Our main goal right now is our master plan, because this is supposed to carry us through for years. That was the point of this. And that's what we had discussed last year is it's not about building right now. We're discussing a master plan. So we're not going through years and years and one administration wants this, another administration wants this. So that's the point of this master plan. And I've talked to some other people, and one concern that I had, and I had kind of voiced it last time, is I feel like the egg shop should be on its own. And I know you had said that that's possibly a rise in cost, but to me, sticking on the west side of the school, where are the doors, because you don't want your doors on the north or the west side, and you want your egg kids to be able to open the doors and take their stuff out, and you don't want it set right there. And I'm wondering if there's a better placement for our egg shop to where they can have their building, and when they're working on.
Maybe I'll ask these
Well,
guys right now,
that's the
what's
stuff.
your reasoning or where it's at?
Or can we place it somewhere else? You know, off on its own.
Why would you not want it attached to the school?
Well, because to me, and speaking to other people about your egg shop, is what goes on in your egg shop. So the welding and the small, depending on all of what they have, it would be best if your egg shop is set off on its own. As far as your motors and that type of thing, if you're working, your working space would be better set off on its own.
And the kids coming and going?
And as far as bringing all of their stuff out, of your egg shop, you want that space so your egg kids, whether it's a welding project or whatever they're doing, to be able to be taken out of the egg shop. This really isn't probably the best where it's set right there in the parking lot. And maybe you have had other discussions or,
They have a fence they're gonna put around there, I know, to kind of block some of that stuff that's gonna be laying out there. But what's the pros and cons of having it connected?
We had talked about the option of having it separate. The pros are the obvious connectivity and having the students be able to not have to go outside, put shoes on, put boots on, and then have to take off their jackets and store those, et cetera. But the major cons are the noise and sometimes the smells. But those things can be accommodated if we have a vestibule between the shop. A vestibule would be like a space that if you have to come through to get into this building, well, there's two sets of doors. It's kind of like an airlock, so only one door is open at a time. So that'll cut down on any sound or smells that are escaping from the shop. That's something that we've done in the past and it works quite well. Want to have it separate. You can still have it separate in that location. Just be away from the building. I'm not sure what would be gained by doing it.
as far as where the doors are placed, so the doors would be placed on the north and the west side. Is that's
Which
probably not
doors?
ideal either. I'm guessing, like, you're gonna want overhead doors for your shop, for your egg shop classes, correct? I mean, you're not just gonna have walk-through doors. So
Right.
if you're
We
gonna have,
showed some overhead doors on the west side for that.
so that's probably, and then that's my other point is that's probably not ideal to put your overhead doors on the west side of your building.
Well, those kind of details are what we would get into when we get into the whole design.
Right, and so that's why I'm saying, because right now this is just the master plan. Looking at this and an egg shop would want your doors facing the south or the east. And I mean,
But that
anybody
isn't
who's
part
on
of
the
this
farmer
space.
ranch, correct, that would be,
Well,
That's
it's been
what the next
facing the north
phase-
for how many years? I was in there for 5 years. That was never a problem.
right, but you're talking, that's why we want to build something bigger and better. So
Mhm.
let's put the egg shop in a location that would work best.
One of the concerns that we had, or I have with the separate, is the security where the kids are going back and forth and people walking through the parking lot. That was one of the things that I was concerned about. And if you have, I think we need to try to design a building where the security is built into the design. and maintenance. And so having separate buildings, and separate rooms, little nooks and crannies really cuts that down. So that's what my concern was during the meeting, so.
Yeah, I think it's good for the kids to walk outside and get fresh air and walk between buildings. I mean,
I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, maybe it was, but I'm with Chuck on this one. I have to agree with the safety point of this, and this is just from some of the different trainings and things that we've done here. Anytime your kids are out, I mean, we do it now already, kids, they have to come into they have to come to the office to get permission to go out to their vehicles just to get something now, and now you're gonna want whole classrooms of children going back and forth between the whole other building. I think you're opening up a whole,
yeah, I
Another-
think that's ridiculous. You expect them to drive to school, they drive to practice, you can't. They're high school kids, you gotta give them some freedom and going outside, these kids are here for 8 hours. They need to have outdoor fresh air once in a while, and I don't think it kills them. And I don't believe it's a safety concern for them to walk. I guess.
Well,
Spencer, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is,
Mark.
is the purpose of this meeting
to hire maybe this company, is this just a conceptual design or is this something you guys have actually hammered out?
This is very conceptual, and this is just looking at program of spaces, what's required for size of egg shop as we work through with the building committee, have conversations. Obviously, that egg shop still has flexibility to change size, proportions, shape, everything. This was based off of the conversations with the building committee for needs of size of the space and potential locations. There were a lot of discussions and conversations about the appropriate location for the egg shop. And the idea of the master plan is to provide the general area and size of where this addition might take place. And all of the nitty gritty of exact door locations, exact size and shape of the room really start to take shape as we move into the next phase of the design process.
So the other part of my question is the purpose of this meeting then in the sense to hire you guys then, or is?
We've already
you've already-
hired them.
Yes.
We're
So
just
then to
trying.
maybe move forward with this conceptual design to kind of spur off of it then? Or
To put it to a bid.
do you guys have anything that we can see? Like as far as can you put up on the screen, or do you have extras of these? We can pass them around?
The point of it is to finalize. We hired them to get a master plan. This is the whole point of this, is to say, we want A, B, and C, and where are we gonna place it? So we're not just throwing buildings up. That was the discussion.
That's the next phase.
Yeah.
though.
Like basically essentially vote to get to that next step. So can we move forward? Everyone's wanting to move forward, like, can we move forward, or are we just gonna stay stuck on this conceptual phase? We need to get into the next,
No,
that's what. the
our
purpose of the
placement
meeting-
of this is what,
That's the next step,
that's not what I understood.
I think, right, or no?
I don't know, I've tried, in September it was brought up to go to contract to design, and we're still here.
So as far as the building committee, Corey,
Josh was on every meeting.
Josh. So when you're discussing this, and you guys are sitting down looking at this, did you guys pick out like, okay, we want the gym here, and we want this here, because that was our discussion when we decided to hire them, was we want a master plan. So we're not going from one year to another year and saying, we're gonna throw buildings up here, we're gonna put buildings here. So hire you guys to hammer out a master plan, and the board should have input. So when you guys discussed that, how did that go?
So what I recall is we talked about what was currently located at the powerhouse bus barn location. And what are the possibilities of bringing that to this current site?
Yeah.
And granted, there was several conversations back and forth, and then if I recall right, we were presented with two plans, two drawings, I should say, this one and another one. And the committee felt this drawing flowed the best out of the two we were presented with.
So as far as the placement of, we could move some of this stuff, like there's the egg shop, because that's one of the things that I think that's to me is gonna look like a mess when you have that stuff all out there as people drive by on your school and your doors are facing the wrong direction. That's my question.
The doors is not, we haven't even got to that point.
But if you're gonna put it there, yeah, it is.
So.
I think her question is, after this step, if you wanted to, could the ag shop be moved to a separate location
Yes.
after this step?
The short answer is yes. I mean, there's ultimate flexibility still, and if the egg shop ultimately needs to be at a different location, the things that then we also would consider is how we lay out that gym space and all of the phase two, as we have described in the master plan of the various phases. How does it impact the use of that space, and how does that potentially need to rearrange if the egg shop is at a different location.
So when you go to draw these up, when we step into drawing these and you guys go through and lay all of this out and it goes to specs, there's things in here obviously that we aren't gonna build right now. So when is the point when we rearrange this and we say, okay, some of this we're not gonna have? Can we move this here? When is that step?
That's the very first step.
Okay, so the next time we meet with you guys, that's what we're gonna be doing.
If we're hired to do the design contractually, we're not hired to go through those phases of design yet. But first step of, if you say we want to hire you guys to do CTE edition, we're going to, phase one of that is going to be reaffirming the program of spaces of what you guys plan or need to build now. What should be included in the final design or not. We'll go through the program of spaces, confirm that, and start reviewing and looking at the layout of those spaces to make sure they align with the district's needs and how you'll function as a school with
See,
that
and-
addition.
And I guess when we had discussed this before, I was under the impression that that's what this was, and that's what we had originally paid you for already, and that's the step that we were on.
So we have gone through a number of iterations of how the spaces could potentially lay out and various options of this portion of the addition or as an entire whole, doing a larger complex. And ultimately, what the building committee gave us direction on is the preference of this layout of spaces because of the ease of ability to phase it out into separate projects based on funding availability and needs of the district. It doesn't mean that that CTE egg shop addition is a final layout by any means.
So when you guys have done this before, like you said, you've worked with Kadoka and wherever else, how often do you guys meet with the entire board?
More so with the building committee and then the building committee also give an update to the board.
So
So you rarely meet with the board, is that kind of what I'm getting?
yeah, like and every district is different. But for instance, we're currently working with Mead School District on various projects, and I'll meet with the building committee once a month at a minimum as we go through planning of these various projects. And then the building committee takes the information that we discuss in those meetings and updates the board as a whole. And we will come to a board meeting. I've been to 2 board meetings with the Mead School District to talk about when we reach certain levels of design phase, like to present this, call it the schematic design level drawings, like we talked about last week when we heard the different levels of design phase drawings. And I meet with the entire board as the building committee updates the board intermittently between those timeframes. And then I'll do an overview of the schematic design plans and get an entire sign off on the board. But the in-depth level conversations happen at the building committee level. And then the building committee is presenting that information and discussions and a direction to the board.
So as far as my looking at this and thinking that doesn't work, that wouldn't be discussed with your board.
That's a building
That's
committee
a
level
building committee.
conversation.
I see.
And typically the reason why it's set up that way, and like I said, every district will do it a little bit differently. But typically, a lot of those conversations really are an administrative level and how they want to run their school. And when you get a full board, you have a quorum and full public input. And some of those conversations really are better held in a smaller group, and hence why typically a school board will put together a building committee to act on behalf of the board and make decisions in the best interest of the entire board and present that information. The building committee is typically narrowing it down to a sole focused option that they are then going to present to the board.
Because I think in the past, that's not the way it, from my understanding, that's not the way it has went from previous building projects.
So the way this is designed, I mean, could it looks like if the concern was the direction we're facing was a concern, it looks like it could face south.
But that's all stuff that would go in the contract design phase that we would be
As
doing
we
on.
work through this
That's what we're trying to get
design.
through tonight,
So there shouldn't be any concern about those. should there?
No.
not tonight.
My
And
under-
secondly,
Mr. Sikora, you were here for a lot of the construction projects. How was it handled? Was there a building committee for this?
Yeah, we had. I remember meeting with the architect and Sioux Falls with Roger Barber was the president at the time. And he and Stuart Kitterman and Ed and I met with the architect. And he did a quick draw at the office. He sent the other ones to Ed. I don't remember if there was a building committee meeting, but for sure a lot of that was my first.
And when Pandy and I met with a financial advisor that does specifically work with school districts, works with building projects, he said and recommended that we keep 1.5 in reserve. And the rest you could put towards a potential building project. I've also ran numbers and we've talked about it in our budget committee meetings, how much we would be eligible for a capital outlay certificate, what a capital outlay certificate is, how you go about paying that back. And so I did run numbers and have those here for you tonight, but I don't know if you here would like to.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
So like right now, I sent you last week on the 11th, what the land valuations are for our district for page 23. That did go up. Right now, our land valuation is at $334,832,063. So what that means is we, as a school district, could obtain a capital outlay certificate at 1.5%, which equals about 5 million. And that does not have to go to referendum, so it doesn't have to go to vote. That would have to be a majority vote within the school board. And then we can also take out a capital outlay certificate up to 3%. That's 10 million, but that does have to go to referendum
And that's above and beyond the 5 million.
that we already have in cash. Does anybody have any specific questions? It's hard for me to give out information without you
So when
having.
you talk about the 6.5 million in all the accounts, I was always under the understanding that capital outlay had to be used for building projects, general fund was your day-to-day. and you
So
couldn't
when we
really
do our audit,
Float them around,
right, impact aid can be used on whatever we would like.
right?
When we do an audit and when I give numbers, I like to give audited numbers because then we all know that they're audited and they're accurate. So when our auditors do our audit, they combine the general fund and impact aid. Because what we do as a district is we use that money to supplement our general fund, the impact aid dollars. So they combine those two funds within our audit. So as of FY22 audited, unaudited fund balance in the impact aid and general fund, we have $5 million. In the capital outlay fund, unaudited fund balance, we have 1.4 million.
So what we would do, from my understanding, is you roll over our impact aid money into capital outlay.
Correct.
Drop from those funds. Or you have the option of using these certificates to fund it at 1.5%, and every year you have to have enough money in capital outlay to pay off essentially a mortgage. And that's-
You're exactly correct.
So if you go that route, we don't have to clean out our entire account.
Well, Amy and I were talking this afternoon. If we went out to contract to design on the CTE complex wing, and you're talking about, we're paying our bills, we'll be receiving revenues in May, and we'll receive revenues next September above that. And we've also been doing our research on construction managers to look at ways that what we can afford to do now and what we can look at on a timeline.
And
So we're not paying all that money up right now.
no, and a capital outlay certificate, it's a whole lot different than a bond. I mean, we're not even, I didn't even do calculations for a bond because I didn't feel like that was something that the board was even looking at. Capital outlay certificates are are what a lot of this area school districts are doing and using to build projects. Unless they had a huge,
How much did we deficit spend last year?
I think we transferred 650,000 from impact aid into the general fund.
Okay, so what you're looking at from impact aid, you said 1.6. That's not gonna last very long because we deficit spend every year.
That was capital outlay, it was 1.6.
Yeah, but we don't deficit.
But you're saying to be left in your impact aid fund. Isn't that what you said when you talked
Into
to
all fund balance.
in all fund balances?
That's what the finance advisor, when he broke down all of our past way we operate, that's
Right,
his
but you
recommendation.
can't really go off of your past because since last year to this year, our staff, and I'm including administrators as well,
Mhm.
is way above where it was. Our expenses are going to be way above where they are. So as a budget committee, that should be sat down and looked at. What are we gonna budget? What are we going to be deficit spending? Because impact aid is never a guarantee. And when you look at where our federal government is, we have to be really cautious of that because you go start on a project like this and we lose our impact aid, we're in a heap of trouble and you're gonna be cutting staff.
I don't think we'll cut staff because I don't think our school is going to get smaller. Well,
You're
just
gonna
looking
have
at
to
the,
cut staff when you don't have the budget to pay them.
But when you
If
look
we
at
have
the increase in students, we also get increase in state aid.
That's right. But my point is, we already deficit spent forever and taken it out of impact aid.
You have
So
to,
now,
oh, sorry.
Amy, I looked at it with you. My point is when you actually look at these numbers and we've discussed this, I've been on the budget committee for I don't know how many years and we've discussed this. You have to be very careful with impact aid. And that's where a lot of people are looking at this $5 million. That can be gone in a very short amount of time. And
We
that's
don't
my point.
deficit spend 600,000.
Yes, we do.
We
That's
didn't
what
use the year before. We did not.
It is always transferred out of impact aid, correct?
We deficit spend and we always do a transfer from impact aid into general fund.
just because it's transferred over there, don't mean you spend it all.
Correct.
But here's the thing, we already need a classroom. Okay? We
But
need
if you
today.
built an egg, if you built this egg shop, you have a classroom right down there. The current.
Okay.
chamber.
But we also had this conversation in the building committee meeting, is that you're putting that shop there, that shuts off any construction. But if we were sitting in a situation where we can put 2 classrooms in an ag shop, but still have the setup to put in the third one, we're in much better shape. Okay, and just because today we need 1 classroom, doesn't mean that tomorrow we're gonna need the second one and then the third one.
Well,
We're
tomorrow you
trying
might not
to-
need any. I mean, you can't. That's
Well,
my
you gotta look at the numbers and the growth that's going on in these hills.
I think
And
so too.
you know, it's really, here we have Wall Economic Development, very proactive. We have the Wall Chamber, very proactive. We have the Wall City Council, putting thousands of dollars into infrastructure around here. And then we're sitting here.
Okay, does anyone else have any input they want to talk about?
You know, guys, I mean, I think we're in a situation, and I think most of us would agree, where we need a classroom. I think there's potential that we could need more than one classroom. I categorize that as a bit of a need. And when you look at the ag shop, I think that would benefit a lot of kids in the school. Not just the athletic department, even though I do hope in time, once we complete this project, we can look further down the road. But this would benefit a lot of kids. And I think that there's need for a classroom. And I think we have the money, and I think as long as we don't go too over the top, I don't feel like this is an unwise way to use the funds.
I agree.
Personally. Now, there's gonna be things we have to iron out in time, like where the doors go, and, you know, this is a very top-down approach. There's a lot of movement here, but I think we get behind this phase, the CTE addition, and get to work on some bids.
So can we make a motion for that?
Like, let me say something first. The only thing that I would say, looks like we could build, if it's possible, something not attached to the school, like a pole barn, an all-steel building. We could get our egg shop, all of our gyms, potentially for the same amount of money we're gonna spend on the CTE. I think
We have
it'd be
to
worth
look
looking
long,
into.
long-term.
How long term?
Well, how long-term is your guys' plan here? Would you say? Like- 100-year school?
That's the
That's what you
ideal.
said last time?
Was the lifespan of an all-steel building?
40?
Yeah.
45.
I mean, that's the general number to throw.
And then you need to still the outside, or
Yeah, I mean, they call them 40-year lifespans, 40-year leases. I got one thing I would just like to point out though is generally on scope of work, and the architects probably know better than I do, depending on the size of this, the smaller you scale it out, the higher rates you're gonna get for absolutely everything. Everything's gonna cost more. The bigger it is, generally you'll get a better rate on whatever it is you're doing. Things are only getting more expensive. Every aspect of construction, labor is shooting through the roof, building materials aren't terrible, but it gets balanced out by concrete being more and more expensive. Fuel, just whatever you do, whatever you don't do this time around, in 5 years is gonna cost 3 times as much as what it would cost right now. So it's just something to take into consideration, that if the funds are available, it doesn't put a person in a financial pinch where you can't safely get through it, then you really need to consider trying to do as much as possible at once. That's it. It is truly going through the roof. It will be 3 times as much in 5 years. It's already gone up 3 times in the last 4 years.
In that contract design phase, is that something we can look at as a whole, doing it in a piece versus doing it all together? In that next,
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that proposal that was sent was only for the CT
only for the CTE.
at this time.
But ultimately, I mean, you can have those conversations about what is the overall budget of the school district and what can you bite off, given your guys' budget and comfort level. Those are obvious conversations that we can have. Proposal, based off of a percentage of construction that was set would change drastically from a fee standpoint from doing the additional stuff. It just, you know, if it's based off of a percentage of construction and you're building more and we're designing more spaces, then obviously you have to take into account that fee line or design services fee line grows with the project.
Well, I would just like to say, the city is putting a lot of money out, hoping for growth. And it is a hard decision to make, because you decide, you know, do we need the housing? housing first, or do we need the jobs? Well, you have to start with one or the other. And, you know, our project's coming up in 23. We're hoping for like an expansion of about 40 houses to be built. You've got to start somewhere. And yeah, those numbers are scary, but you got to be positive and know that if you build it, they will come. And it's not going to be older people, I would hope, that come to these houses. They're not going to be able to afford it. It's going to be your younger people that have kids, and we will need this expansion.
When you look at the growth projections for Douglas School District alone, and I brought those, if anybody wants to look them, it's incredible. And I think that Douglas is not that far away. And I think that those kinds of numbers, I'm not saying we need to look at those kinds of numbers as a whole here, but we need to look at the growth here overall and what that looks like for our school when we're already struggling with space with classrooms, shops, gyms, with all of it. I think that those things need to be considered and they need to be looked at. So I would, I'd be willing to go to the design. Need a motion for that?
I just want to go back to this process because this totally baffles me because we've discussed before that your building committee does not make the decision, but by everything that you have said, basically the building committee does make those decisions and then they run it past your board. I'm just clarifying that that's.
That's how normally boards set up. Is that you have a committee, just like budget committee, and you break down whatever, you can spend that quality time without a quorum. Special board meetings, you have a quorum and your public is invited.
Our budget, though, committee takes recommendations to your board. This to me is it's already been set and done.
It comes down to how, do you want to have more special board meetings or do you want to have committee meetings?
I guess if you want 3 people to decide that, that's the way it is.
I think a clarification from my end, and maybe I misspoke, but the building committee is typically bringing a recommendation to the board. It's not making the board still makes the decision in the end. It's the building committee providing a recommendation, as you said.
But I think that's what this is here.
The committee spent a lot of time on this. Okay, there was a lot of discussion that went into this. This isn't just
We
something.
could argue all night whether it should be standalone or part of the school. I mean, there's pros and cons. I can see standalone, but as far as like custodial and maintenance and security, it's gonna be better next to the school. I don't think we're even at that point. We're just trying to get to a stage where we can
Decide those things.
get a little more
Can I
down.
ask one more thing as a community, and maybe I'm overstepping, but it's kind of repeat what Dar's asking. I know you guys eventually are getting real close to maybe putting making a motion. Or would the board not even consider doing it as a whole? Because it seems like the motion is going to be move forward with phase 1, classrooms and ag shop. I just don't want to discount what he said, because as a community, you look down the road, and if we're going to spend 3 times as much in so many years, I don't want to get 5 years down the road and we have that other part of the facility, and then we're right back where we started now too, and then it's like never going to happen. I guess is what I'm getting at. So like, do we need to have that conversation or not? Maybe
My understanding.
I don't know. And I'm cool with anything. I just want to understand as a community, like, is that something we're even entertaining or no? And if it's
That's kind of
no,
why I asked.
completely fine.
That's kind of why I asked.
Well, I would say, come on,
Is
John.
there- Well, I would
I
agree.
have a question, like, what is wrong with having a referendum? Like, you brought that up, that you get more money, basically a loan on a referendum. What is the problem with that? If we lock this in, to me, if the price is gonna go up, what is the problem with that?
There's 2 different type of referendums. There's a bond and then there's a capital outlay certificate.
Yeah.
The capital outlay certificate would go into the referendum for that is for 3% of you have to use your current capital outlay revenue to pay on that loan. If you went to a bond, a bond, it's a whole separate levy. So that bond is bringing in revenue to specifically pay for that project. So you're not using revenue that's taken through capital outlay levy to pay on that project. It's a whole separate levy, whole separate income, whole separate revenue.
Okay, so
Would we
what-
have enough money though, is what I'm asking, I
The
guess.
capital outlay certificates, we don't have, we can just, the board can make the decision to go out to capital
For one
certificates
point 5%.
for 1.5%. That would generate another $5 million. We can go to what, 10 million if we went to bond.
The risk with using a 3% for a capital outlay certificate is you have to use your current capital outlay revenue to pay that bill. Meanwhile, still continuing to do the everyday tasks and the everyday expenses that you have already within the capital outlay revenue that you use. So the max that we could levy in capital outlay is 895,000 based on page 23 land valuations. Currently, we are levying at 1.36 mil at 455,000. So that 400, let's say if we were building the building today and we went to a $10 million project, that would not be enough levy or enough payment to make that $10 million payment
So
each year.
basic people's that contributed their land taxes, what you're saying, basically double to
Just in the capital outlay.
just capital. What percentage
Levy.
is that?
Well, I guess I'm not understanding your question. So like, it's based on the different type of land you have.
Do we know ballpark on like what phase 1 and phase 2 together might?
That's kind of what is there a way we can go and bid it together, the whole thing, or bid it separate?
The hard part about bidding it together is it's an upfront investment for the school district because you pay for the design services of the whole thing, but you may only build a portion. That's why it's better to understand your budget to what you can afford to build, so you're not paying for design services on something that you're not going to build.
You know, when I first, this master plan was presented to me as something that we wanted to do in phases. And so I was thinking, you know, we don't want to raise taxes and capital outlay, which the max you can levy is about $1.40,000. So based on the valuation, $1.40. So right now we're doing roughly half that, but we are maxed out in the general fund and the max living per sped. So my goal was, in my mind, if we have roughly $5 million to use, take the $5 million, use the capital certificates to build the project. A year from now, 2 years from now, you see what you have for money and you keep on going. It's not that I don't see any need here, but I don't have the desire to overextend ourselves over it past getting the classrooms
That was kind of my question. Thanks, Rick.
in my mind.
And you wouldn't be overextending yourselves if you went to a bond. And I mean, and that's just, I'm not for or against or anything. That's just.
And that goes to community vote.
What
That
about
has to be
community?
a 60% passed by the community for a bond to go into effect.
So like Philip, they did a bond, correct, when they did their
I'm not sure.
auditorium. The
First
alignment. Yeah.
Lyman, that did not, we were the architects for Lyman
No,
and they
they're
did not.
piecemeal.
They did.
a bond.
They're doing phases.
Oh, we were the architects for the Lyman gym addition and the work that was completed, and they did not do a general obligation bond.
When you talked last week about the construction managers and the different ways to do that there, would the, you know, I know you guys talked about like your fees and that for the design phase and it being more expensive to design something we potentially wouldn't build, but would that be something that perhaps construction manager could look at? Also, you know, if we move on with this next phase and we go the construction manager route or the contract manager route, would that be something that they could possibly?
I think that's
Yeah.
something that they could provide some square foot numbers or historical data to, as much as value as you can pull from historical data in
Yeah.
today's day and age. But absolutely, that's something that they could do a quick takeoff on. Any construction manager that you might interview for this would have the familiarity of school construction and gymnasium space. What it would take.
Because I think that's one of the biggest, from what I'm hearing, one of the biggest holdups is nobody knows what anything's gonna cost, and that's what the scary part of this is.
Do you happen to remember the numbers for the Lyman project? I mean, that's gotta be pretty recent.
Yeah, well, Kadoka's lots changed since the Lyman project, you know. That was pre-pandemic. But, you know, Lyman, Hermosa School project, those were the most recent pre-pandemic, and those were in the $200 a square foot range. Kadoka that we just bid out and are under construction on, I want to say that one was about $350 a square foot. Piedmont Valley Elementary School for 8 classroom addition. No gym space, obviously that square footage is going to be different. That was about 300 a square foot. We're in design phase right now on a kitchen expansion. Again, different use. That one was between 450 and 500 a square foot for Sturgeon High School.
So realistically, if we wait another 3 or 5 years, we could be looking at over 500 square foot.
I left my crystal ball at home. but-
Well, I mean, that's the way the things are going.
Yeah, I mean,
So
the
we
way
can come back to
things
this
are
in 2 or 3 years, and then they might just say, no, this is gonna happen. This isn't gonna work.
in our Black Hills region, talking with contractors, the amount of work that's out there and continues to be in the foreseeable future, it probably is not going to go down, but don't quote me.
So back to our budget that we're talking about, we keep talking that the capital certificates could give us an additional 5 million over 5 million. If our capital outlay is at 1.4, where's the balance of that first 5 million coming from?
It's between impact data and capital outlay.
That first 5 million is impact aid and capital outlay.
Well, right now, general fund and impact aid alone has $5 million.
The two of them.
And capital outlay has 1.4.
Right.
I guess I can understand your guys' point, you know, building that now, it's gonna be cheaper than down the road, but we can't just go hog wild, I mean, and if we don't have the money to pay for it, we can't, you know, get stretched so we can't run the school. But,
Yeah, based on
But
that
that's, but you
square
can also
footage
take it to
price.
the public, the one, get a referendum of bond, you could always also look at that.
got passed.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's got to pass and, you know, that would, you know, give someone a idea of how the public thinks about it.
I'm like Ridge, I wanna build something, but I don't wanna raise taxes. on Taxpayers either.
Based on the rough square footage of this, and it's tricky because you've got an ag shop there, it doesn't have, you don't have the, I should say, it probably won't have the cost per square foot into an ag shop you would a regular classroom, but you're probably talking, and then, am I right, looking at phase one, we're talking $3 to $4 million, roughly.
Roughly, yeah, that's about
And so,
10,000 square feet as shown on that master plan for the CTE wing.
So that's total. You're saying 3 to 4 million for the total
that's what it-
construction.
Yeah.
what it will be. So when I look at that, I think that's something we can afford to do.
Can I just say, I know, and I hope you're not offended when I say this, but when we did the concession stand, we based everything on a previous project. And we're not gonna know what this, if we go with this wing, we're not gonna know the true cost until bids come in. So I don't want the last, I don't know whoever did it, they said, well, we had projects similar to this in Rapid City and Spearfish, and it came out to this. Well, then the bids came in and it was way more, so
Yeah, I mean,
let's just not,
It started at 500,000, and then the next time they came in after soil samples, it was 750, and by the time it was done, I believe it was 1.2.
But you know, we
But-
have,
Yes, it was.
but when we talk,
Or the
when we talk
concession
about costs of this
Yes,
wing,
because they
Let's
had to
be
add
careful.
bathrooms that we had not planned.
It was a lot more than we thought, just because
well,
the building on this soil, it's
Yeah, that's the other factor. And then when you start to get into it, we can use, like you said, Chuck, we can use recent projects, but you also have to account the inflation that we're seeing and when this project might hit the streets and to bid if you move forward with the design and take that into account as well when we're doing the budgetary and quantity takeoffs for estimates. It's like at this phase right now, when it's a planning block and we don't have actual construction types, wall assemblies, things like that figured out at this phase. Mechanical systems aren't hashed out at this phase. You know, you go off of a square foot basis, but as we go through design or construction manager, as you work through design, are going to do actual square foot and quantity takeoffs of all the materials as they get additional information, or as we work through additional information and updating those budgets based off of.
When you said that, when you go to add on to the school for this wing, you know, they use the prefab.
Precast, architectural precast.
Right.
insulated panels,
So will that be the same, and how is that gonna match up? And I know this probably doesn't matter right now, but I'm just curious.
No, it's obviously a good conversation to have. That egg shop lends itself, it makes sense to be that type of construction, or CMU construction, but those are things that we would work through because those all have different budget points as well. And like I told Corey last week, it ultimately depends on what your guys' budget is to, if all you can afford or want to look at or consider is a 40-year building or a pre-engineered metal building, then it's our job to listen to you guys and your needs. We provide recommendations for longevity and what might be the best long-term fit. That doesn't always align with what is the school boards or the district's goals. And it's our job to listen to what you guys have to say and design a facility that's going to work best for you, while providing you our professional recommendation.
And the question about the precast materials is a good example of where a construction manager can help. Because they'll have their finger on the pulse as to whether or not masons are too busy to want to bid this job. And if so, then maybe you want to stay away from using too much concrete masonry, and precast would be. So those are things that they can weigh in on in the process.
So is it safe to say on those numbers, a budget to consider to look at on whatever you want to build is between 5 and 15 million? Based on what you guys just discussed, I mean, that's something to go with. Obviously, you stretch yourself a lot of 15, but 5 is very comfortable, it looks like to me. And max without having a bond and all that is 15, is that?
No, that's,
Max is 10, right?
Well, no, with the bond it was 10, right? It would be 10 plus the original 5.
well, we have 5 million cash.
And you can
You
do,
can go up to 10% of your land valuation with the bond, and that's 33 million. We're not gonna do that. I mean, there's
caps or
like, it's all over the board. I mean, it's based on what the board wants to do as far as how they want to proceed with loans and using cash, bonds. It's the board's, that's,
those original numbers you're just talking about, those are our number, that the 5, and then 1.5% of the 300 and whatever. And then you can get 10 with what was the requirement?
certificate.
that's a 3%
Went to
capital
public
out.
vote.
That's a 3% capital outlay certificate, but that has to go to vote.
Right. And that would give you your 15, right?
Correct, but we don't have the revenue to pay that amount of a loan. We don't have the current capital outlay revenue to pay that.
Based on that, you gotta have the interest.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, you have to raise taxes.
Right, basically, if the 3% certificate outlay passed, we'd have to max levy and capital outlay, which would be an increase in everyone's taxes.
In which
If-
our levy and capital outlay was higher prior to this year where we moved our sped, we had greater sped needs, so we maxed levy for sped, max levy in general fund to get your state aid. And then as a result to offset that, brought down capital outlay levy. So if that makes sense.
I'm just trying to get
Yeah.
hands around what kind of budget numbers
I
to.
mean, that is an option, the 3% up to 10 million, but using our current constraints that we are currently levying at, we could not afford that mortgage or that loan.
Without a property tax.
Yeah. Correct.
And a bond is basically
That's a
it's-
whole
if it
separate.
passes, it's a whole nother
Yeah.
It's
assessment on
the
your taxes.
easiest way, I mean, not putting, I mean, as far as a school district to bring in money, but it puts the burden on, the taxpayer.
Correct. And so who decides if we go to that bond? Is it a petition by the public or is the board?
No, you would
decide
just,
that?
board goes out for election.
I think it might be
I'm
5%
just asking
of
for
the,
a clarification.
I'm not sure. I think 5% of the electorate might need to formulate a petition.
But
Or
I-
not the electorate, but the base, I believe.
I'm still in favor of a construction manager and we go in our phases. And we look at, not just capital outlay certificates, but also, what are some grants we can get? There's a lot of workforce grants out there. And Spearfish and Bellfish each got, $250,000 to put inside of their CTV complexes. What are some businesses that be willing to invest in our CTV? I mean, there's other options. We haven't even talked about the REIT loans or so forth, but this project isn't gonna get done overnight. But we do need to start somewhere. And that's, at first I wasn't in favor of construction manager. I just, just design, bid, build. And then after I learned more about a construction manager, I think that a construction manager would be perfect for this. So that they can not only see what we want now and see how much money we have now, but also look over and say, okay, now the next thing you wanted that, hey, how about we do some of this while we're working on that? They bid out those little pieces as they go. And yeah, it's gonna take some work to get this done, and it's gonna take some meetings, and if you don't have any confidence in the building committee you have now, put one together that you do have confidence in, and let's go. Kids need this.
Long story short, the best way to move forward is to get a motion to start phase 1.
Yeah, this whole project, you look at this project, it takes care of every kid in this school. Every kid, doesn't matter if you're sports, drama, ag, whatever. And we can even bring in other stuff for these kids. It's for every kid in this school district. And that's what we got done with our master plan, and we looked at that. What did you say? Every kid will benefit by this.
And that's what makes phase 1 stand out. It's not that there's not other needs. I don't doubt that. I wish we could give everybody everything they wanted. But I look at the first need, classrooms, lockers. That gives you, a plan for some lockers, gives you a plan for some classrooms. It would help a lot of kids in an ag shop, and we can work our way from there. So, if we have some other things to discuss, I think we should do that. Start moving forward.
And we like say they make a motion to do phase 1 and go forward with this. Can you guys as a board also get together and have your committee meetings with your budget meetings and get a more definite budget of if phase 1 costs this, we will have $3.5 million left over that would be usable towards starting on the next phase of the project.
That would be essential, yeah.
But they can't meet together.
Yeah, you know what I
You
mean?
can't have your committees meet together. Your committees
No.
have to be separate.
You would
No, I
have your
understand
separate
that, but I'm
committee.
saying whatever your building committee can meet on Tuesday, and your budget committee can meet on Wednesday, but you could start to work towards this budget, and understanding how much you guys feel comfortable spending towards the next phase, once you approve the first phase. And I think that's what a lot of people here have been kind of clamoring about, is that they want to know, like, is this it? And then we're not ever going to build again? Or are you guys actively working towards trying to find money to take care of those other needs that people are concerned about?
And I think that's where Pandy was talking about too, the benefits of having a construction manager with that, because that's somebody who looks at the project as a whole, and they can kind of put those pieces together. Even though our contract, our design right now is only for this first part, the CTE wing is where we start. We get into that, and then we can look at the bigger.
I think everybody just doesn't want to feel like this is a loan that's being thrown to them, and then we're just not going to talk about it anymore. I think people want to continue effort into seeing how much of the stuff on that paper, maybe we don't get it all, but how much of it can we afford to do, and how can we work that out with these guys that are here helping us with it, and our contract manager, all that stuff. There's some other.
There was one thing I did want to discuss, I guess, is, so with construction, with this method, could you guys give us, I guess, a better question, for you guys, one more kind of overview about how the pay structure works on a percentage basis or a dollar sum? Yeah, can you explain your fees? I know you've done it before, but I'd like to make sure it makes sense to me, I guess, for sure.
Well, the design contract that we proposed based off a percentage. And then as we work through the design at those different phases, we'll bill a certain amount. So we don't bill the whole amount, bill a portion of the design, that's schematic design, 50%, I think. And then a certain amount when we get to design development. Each of those phases, that's also when we do an updated cost estimate and check the numbers. Sometimes go back and do some value engineering. But as we go through the phases, those are the real stopping points, billing points. So we're constantly updating the cost estimate with each of those phases and billing according to that phases. And we don't move to the next one until we get approval. So we go through those design phases, and it'll be we'll let you know what that amount will be, so you can kind of plan for it. But we don't charge until we get through
With each phase.
with each phase.
And then the construction manager, if we're going that method, they usually take, generally, it's 3.5%, or do you have the option of a fixed some dollar amount?
I haven't seen a fixed sum dollar amount on any CM proposals that I've reviewed. If you can ask the question, for sure. And
And if it was probably based initially on a percentage.
yeah, until they can define the project scope enough to lock in a lump sum fixed fee.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Just a couple questions I had.
And then just to bring up, if you do go down the path of construction manager, we'd be on board to assist you with that process as far as getting an RFP for solicitation to contractors. Sitting in on any interviews, ultimately it's your guys' decision, but we can definitely help you with that process of getting a construction manager on board. We've done that with many districts.
Is the construction manager
Suggested
generally the
questions.
general
It's like a
contractor?
general
Yeah.
contractor.
That would be your general contract.
But then you're also still gonna put it out for bid?
Yeah,
Or that's,
so-
he's literally just gonna be the general contractor?
So he's the general contractor, and then when we get the documents done, and put them out to bid. They're gonna put together what they call bid packages. So the concrete, the building concrete will go out in a bid package, the, electrical will go out in a bid package, and
He's not personally gathering those all himself. He's putting it out like on CIC or someplace. and getting-
yeah, but then all the bids would get collected in and open publicly in the various bid packages. So it's still a competitively bid process. And a lot of the construction managers will probably bid on some of the bid packages because a lot of the general contractors do their own concrete work. They do their own rough carpentry work. And they would likely bid on some of those bid packages, but they're still sending it out to other contractors to bid those scopes of work as well.
Do you have
For
recommendations
anything
of
that they
bills that you can give these guys?
self-perform, we usually require them to submit their bids in.
I didn't hear your second follow-up.
Do you have recommendations for contract managers in the Black Hills area that you've worked with or?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we've worked with all of the big contractors in Rapid City area, Hills region. I mean, Ainsworth, Benning, Journey Group out of Spearfish. Any of those contractors, the typical ones that you'd see like a Skull or an RCS or a Gustafson, Dean Kurtz, any of those. We've worked with them all and have good relationships with any of them.
Now that has to go to bid too, right? That this person who wants the CM contract, that has to go to bid too, right?
It's not necessarily a bid. You would issue a statement of interest or an RFP to have the contractors provide their qualifications. And because it's a professional service, you don't necessarily have to take the person with the lowest fee. It's the best value to the district.
That's one of the advantages is you get to feel out the relationship with that construction manager as opposed to having to take the lowest fee. You can see based on qualifications and how they work with you, which one you want the most.
Do you find similar ones that like work with Kadoka and Lyman? I mean, have they been a lot of the same construction
Yeah.
managers? Is it vary quite a bit, or does it seem like out here in the rural area that typically you see one more than the other?
You probably will not get like Lyman, that was Pitt's Construction out of Mitchell. They probably aren't gonna come this far west because there's so much local that's gonna be a lot more aggressive in going after it. But the first phase on Kadoka, when we did the gymnasium project, that was Skull Construction. Phase under construction now with Kadoka is Dean Kurtz Construction. But the same core group is you'll probably get that same 5 to 7 local general contractors that would submit statement of interest or their qualifications. And that's where you get 5 to 7 of them that submit. You guys as a board review all of them that submitted and narrow that down to probably 3 of who you'd likely based off of their qualifications. And then you can interview those 3 and make a selection based off of that. So it's a multi-step process to get down to the general contractor that you would like to work with.
Dean Kurtz did this building.
It seems like a little better process than packaging it up. and going out.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to each method, and we've done a lot of both. And as I said last week, it feels like in the most recent years, it's kind of shifted to a construction manager delivery method.
And I met with my superintendents, Amy met with business managers, and both groups recommended construction managers. Save schools money in the long run.
Number 10.
I would make a motion that we move forward with phase 1.
Second,
I second.
more discussion.
I got a question. So maybe I missed it, but I'm with Elaine. I thought we were gonna approve a master plan first before we moved on. And I'm not okay with moving on, but for the record, I think we should back up and approve this master plan, knowing that there's gonna be changes made to it.
I would agree.
Want to amend the motion? Sure. On the floor, you get a motion or a second.
How would we word that?
I just think it looked cleaner in our minutes in the future that we approve the master plan before we move forward with it. So
And
phase one.
you should, not that I need to make decisions for you guys, but that's the logical process is to come to an
I'm
agreement
not
on.
hardly pro, but can they?
You can either
Rescind
amend the
their
motion
motion
and
and start
add
over.
that you approve the master plan and you would like to go on to phase one, okay? If you, when you vote on the amendment, then you approve the master plan, then you will go ahead and vote on the main motion with the addition of the master plan. The other option is to go through the process of rescinding the motion, and which takes a 2/3 vote. And then you start all over. So,
So we need to vote on the master plan and approving the master plan and then approving the contract for design separately, though.
I would think so.
We need to approve those separately, not at the same
it's
time.
up to you. Amendment is the second motion,
So is there a motion to rescind the original motion?
unless the maker of the motion withdraws it herself.
But, so if we rescind, it's been a while, if we rescind the motion, we can amend. So that we
No,
vote.
just
No,
there'd
no,
be
no,
nothing.
it's gone.
Start over.
I just think it's
Carolyn,
still,
you want to withdraw your
Can we
motion?
still vote on it today, though?
I'll withdraw my motion.
okay with Carolyn doing that, I'll move to accept this master plan, knowing that it's a fluid document.
Any more discussion on Josh's motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Now I'd like to move forward and make a motion to approve. phase one.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion?
So is this accepting their proposal for contract for design? That was that motion.
So can I just ask, I know you guys talked about percentages. So we don't really know what your cost is gonna be right now. We don't pay you anything upfront at this point.
That's correct. We bill as we don't bill beyond any work that we have yet to complete. You know, we just bill what we.
And
So-
then that'll be adjusted as we go.
Yeah,
like you said.
at the beginning, we're gonna use a basis of, like, if you say our construction budget is $4 million, we're gonna set our percentage of fee based off of 4 million, and we'll bill off of that as an estimate until we actually hard bid the project. And then our fee, if that bid comes in less than 4 million, then our fee drops with that construction cost.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
What was that percentage again? I can't find
We
that.
were 7%.
And that's figured on top of it, not as a whole.
Say that again.
That's above the construction cost, correct?
Correct. So if your construction budget is $4 million, then the fee to Architecture Incorporated, and that is inclusive of our consultants as well. It's not just the architect, it's the structural engineer, the civil engineer, the mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, also are underneath of us in that percentage. So in that proposal, I outlined who we would have as our team members for our engineers on the project, and that's part of that 7% fee.
So total dollar amount times 1.07.
Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Guys.
So now we're,
Have to have a motion to go into-
Make a motion to declare us an executive session for the purpose of discussing legal counsel according to South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-2.3.
Madison?
second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This is your big moment, Madison. No, she wants you to come talk to the class.